Okay, this year should be in the Schus Refuah Shalema, Afreda Sima Basara Leah, who's going in for a 10-hour surgery today. Yeah. Okay, so on the first line, Mem Dalid Amin Aleph, welcome back, Randy. Last two words. Ve'ela Kasha. What's the Kasha? We just got through saying that now that the Beis Hamikdash is not around anymore, and we have to act at least in Chutz La'aretz as if we don't know which is the proper day of the first day of Sukkot. So we can't really be sure that when the first day of Sukkot falls down on Shabbos, it's really the first day of Sukkot. So therefore, it wouldn't justify shaking the lulav, since we can't do it in Chutz La'aretz with the two Nami L'Dachi, they don't do it in Eretz Yisrael either. But we had reconciled two different Mishnayos about whether the people are bringing their lulav on Friday afternoon to a Beis Knesset or to a Beis Hamikdash, as distinguishing between when the Beis Hamikdash was standing, when the Beis Hamikdash is no longer standing, indicating that at least in Eretz Yisrael, they would shake the lulav on the first day of Sukkot that falls down on Shabbos, even after the Beis Hamikdash is destroyed. So how else are we going to reconcile those two different Mishnayos? The Tanachada, one Mishnah said, that everybody brought the lulav to Temple Mount on the Friday before the first day of Sukkot that fell on Shabbos. The Tayyidach and the other Bryce, actually the other Mishnah says, the Beis HaKnesses to a Beis Knesset, and we had answered earlier, a daf ago, just yesterday, that it depends on whether the Beis Hamikdash was standing. That was the Mishnah spoke about Harabayas, or when the Beis Hamikdash is no longer standing, that's the Mishnah talks about bringing the lulav on Friday afternoon to the Beis HaKnesset. So we see that at least in Eretz Yisrael, even after the Beis Hamikdash is destroyed, you shake the lulav on the first day of Sukkot that falls down on Shabbos. Say lo, idi vidi bisman shebeis Hamikdash kayim. Both Mishnayos are talking about when the Beis Hamikdash was standing, but not everybody would be in the Beis Hamikdash. Below kasha kam Hamikdash kam bigulin. The Mishnah speaks about bringing the lulav into Harabayas, where they're speaking about those people who would be attending services in the Beis Hamikdash, and the Mishnah spoke about bringing the lulav to the Beis Knesset. We're speaking about those Jews who would be attending services in the Beis Hamikdash North, whatever, the other shuls that were big bulin, that were outside of the Beis Hamikdash. So Amalei Abaye L'Rava Ma'ishna lulav de'avdinan le'shipa zeikel Hamikdash. Why is it that nowadays we shake the lulav outside of we're not in the Beis Hamikdash? The only place where there's a mitzvah, a midaraisa, to shake the lulav for 7 days, it's in the Beis Hamikdash, but we shake the lulav a full 7 days outside of the Beis Hamikdash, Zeikel Hamikdash. Even though when the Beis Hamikdash was standing, you only would have shaken the lulav for 1 day outside of the Beis Hamikdash. Ma'ishna Rava, as opposed to a Rava, where nowadays we don't have a Beis Hamikdash, so we can't do the real Ikka mitzvah of a Rava. To lo avdina la shiva Zeikel Hamikdash, but we only do the a Rava service on Hoshana Rabbah, on the 7th day of Sukkot, and not all 7 days. So why is it the Rabbah we don't duplicate the way it was done in the Beis Hamikdash, which was for 7 days? So Amalei, so Rabbah, or maybe it's Rabbah, I think should be the correct here. So according to the Bach, that he was Rabbah, was the Rebbe of Abaye. So Amalei, Ho'il ve'adam yotzei de chavasa ba'Rabbah shablula. He said, because it's not really, strictly speaking, necessary to have a separate ritual, since you have the Rabbah and the lulav anyway. So when you shake the lulav, you're also shaking the arava. Suddenly that doesn't work. But I said, come on, you can't get credit for two different mitzvahs. You're shaking the arava as part of the Abba Minam. That's a pasuk in the Torah. That it accounts for the mitzvah of lulav, but not for the separate mitzvah of arava. So you'll tell me that you'll shake it to one time for the purpose of the mitzvah of the lulav, where you need to have the Abba Minam together, and you'll shake it another time for the purpose of the mitzvah of arava. Nobody does that. Nobody does that.
Our Mishnah said that we take the lulav for 7 days.
We do, indeed we do. So we said, why is it that we take the lulav for 7 days, but we only do the arava thing for 1 day? That's what we're asking. Yeah.
We just said with the lulav.
Yeah.
So we only did it 1 day.
No, we said 7 days. Why is it that the lulav we do 7 days Seikel Hamikdash, but the arava we only do 1 day Seikel Hamikdash. We only do 1 day the mitzvah of arava nowadays. So we say that. So what's the answer? It can't be that we're really doing the shaking of the arava every day, because we're not. We don't shake the lulav twice, one time for the lulav and one time for the purpose of the arava. So Amar Rav Zvid Mishmei Derava. So Rav Zvid gave an answer. He said, well, because lulav is a mitzvah deraisa in its most pristine form. It's a mitzvah deraisa even nowadays. It's a mitzvah deraisa on the first day. Lulav deraisa avdin and shiva seichel mikdash. So therefore, we have a 7-day. We have imitation mitzvah in order to recollect what was done in the base of Mikdash, where the mitzvah was for 7 days. A Rabba the Rabbanon, but the Rabba, which altogether is only the Rabbanon, it was never the Araisa. So lo avdin la shiva zeichel mikdash. So therefore, when we make a zeichel mikdash nowadays, we don't do it for all 7 days. We only do it for 1 day. But that's not true. Laman, according to whom exactly do you say that the mitzvah of shaking in a Rabba is only a Rabbanon? It's not true. According to Abba Shaul, we derive the mitzvah of shaking in a Rabba from an explicit pasuk in the Torah. It says Hama Ave Nachal. It says Ave Ksiv Shtayim. That the implication is that there are 2 different applications of the mitzvah. Achas the lulav, achas the mikdash. One for the mitzvah of shaking the araba in the lulav, and one for the mitzvah of shaking and standing up the araba in the base of mikdash. Either Rabbanim, and according to the Chachamim, which is what we generally assume, it's a halakha Moshe Sinai. Halakha Moshe Sinai also has the araisa status. That's not a mere Rabbanim. That has the araisa status. We have a tradition from Rabbi Nechunya, from the I guess Valley of Beis Chorasan, that there were 3 things that were handed down together as a halakha l'Moshe Sinai. One was Eser Netios, relevant for this Kodesh Elul. If you had 10 saplings, newly planted trees that were in a field that was a base up 50 by 50 amas, and they were all equidistant from each other. So even though normally we have a din of Charish v'chatzir tishpos of Tosefes Shavias, that you have to stop working the fields and plowing the fields where there are trees during Chodesh Elul, the 30 days prior to Rosh Hashanah of when you have a Shemitah year. That doesn't apply when you have a field of young saplings. When you have estimate of 10 young saplings equidistant from each other in a 50 by 50 amma field, so then you're allowed to plow the field up until Rosh Hashanah. This Elul, you'll be allowed to plow that field up until the beginning of the Shemitah year. That's a halakha Moshe Sinai, so that they'll be properly taken care of and they won't die. A Rava, and also the mitzvah of shaking and standing up the Rava in the base of Mikdash, that's also a halakha Moshe Sinai, that you do it for the 7 days of Sukkot in the base of Mikdash. And also the libation of the water that's performed during Sukkot when the korban tamid will be brought during the days of Sukkot. So that water libation is also halakha Moshe Sinai. So it's not a Rabbanan. So we don't. That answer is not a good answer to say that a Rabba really is only the Rabbanan. Elam Razvid Mishmei the Rabba. Rather, Razvid gave a different answer than the Rabba. Lulav the Islay Ikka b'Yachastarvik Bulin. That since lulav, that there is a basis for it to being required from the Torah, even outside of the base of Mikdash, in the Gvulin, in the areas outside of the base of Mikdash, it's a mitzvah to shake the lulav at least 1 day, the first day of Sukkot. So therefore, we extend upon, we build upon that, and we say that we're going to make a zeichel Mikdash nowadays that you have to shake the lulav for all 7 days of Sukkot. However,
they use the term arvei nachal before to tell us that we needed at least 2 arabos.
Right, and so this is
now we're saying that we're using this to tell us that there are 2 takings of the araba.
Right, that's the opinion of Abba Shaul. Abba Shaul actually said that before. He said that on Lamed Daled and Aleph. He said that we learned from the word arve as well that there are 2 takings of the araba. So this is not the first time that we've mentioned this. It's mentioned before. Abba Shaul in the very first line on Lamed Daled Amud Aleph. That's what he said. We take a look. Okay. Okay. Fine. So so that's the answer. So this is a good answer. Arava where there is no basis for the performance of the mitzvah outside of the base of Mikdash on a deraisa level. Lo avdina and shiva zeichel Mikdash. So since there is absolutely no connection with the mitzvah deraisa when you're outside of the base of Mikdash, so we don't, to the extent that we make a memento of the observance of the mitzvah. And nowadays, there's no need to extend it for 7 days. We only do it 1 day, which happens to be Hoshana Rabbah, which is the day in which we said that the mitzvah Rabbah would be Doche Shabbos if Shabbos fell out on Hoshana Rabbah. So Amar Reish Lakish, Kohanim Baalei Mumin, Reish Lakish is giving us more dinim about the mitzvah of a Rabbah. Said the Kohanim who had blemishes that normally would not be allowed to perform avoda in the base of Mikdash, nonetheless, and they therefore would normally not be allowed to be in the area of the Mizbeach in the base of Mikdash. We make a special dispensation we would allow them to go into that area for purposes of shaking the arava to perform that mitzvah. On the western side of the mizbeach, they lost so that they can go around the mizbeach and encircle the mizbeach in order to fulfill the mitzvah of the arava. It sounds like it wouldn't be the entire Jewish people that would do it. It would just be the Kohanim. That we wouldn't allow the Israelim to go into that area. The Israelim normally can't go beyond the first 11 amos on the eastern side of the Azara. But the Kohanim, even though they were Bali Mumin, we would allow them to go into that area. So Amalei Rabbi Yochanan mi Amma. So Rabbi Yochanan said, "Who says? Who says that? Mi Amma. What do you mean? Who says that? Are you Amma? You said that." So Amma Rabbi Yasi, Amma Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yasi quoted Rabbi Yochanan, saying that there is a mitzvah of carrying the arava. Like they thought that he was asking the question, who said that there's some sort of an obligation to carry to go around with the arava on Sukkot? They said, you said that there's an obligation. You said it's a halakha l'Moshe Sinai. But that wasn't his question. His question was, why is it that we're allowing the Bali Mumin to go into that area when we normally have a Maila? We normally have, it's not really a din deraisa that a Kohen Balmum is not allowed to be in that area, but we have a Maila. We say that as a stringency for the sanctity of the Zara in the base of Mikdash, a Kohen doesn't have a need to be there because he's not disqualified from doing the Avoda, so he's not supposed to be in that area where the Mizbeach is in the Arava. So in order to permit a Kohen Balmum to be in that area, there would have to be some sort of a firm obligation for the Kohen to be, for all the Kohanim to be doing something with the Arava. So that would imply that every single person has an obligation to hold and to shake the Arava. That was Rabbi Yochanan's question. Who said that every single person, every single Kohen is supposed to be shaking the Arava so that we would allow even the Kohanim Bali Mumin to enter into that sanctified area of the Azara where the Mizbeach is located? Then when Mr. Kifa, maybe it's only a requirement to stand up a very, very long branch of an arava by the Mizbeach, which is something that could be done by one Kohen. You just have one, strong Kohen, or doesn't have to be, one Kohen who's able to hold an 11 amma. That's how tall the branches of arava needed to be in order to be stood up against the Mizbeach so that they would protrude beyond the 10 amos of the Mizbeach. There would be 11 amma arava branches. So you just need one Kohen to place the arava branches there. So miyama babali misakipa, miyama babali mumin. And so if I only need one Kohen to do it, so who says that would give permission to a Kohen who has a blemish to go into that area? I'm sorry. So me Dilma Bisakifa. Number one, maybe it should be done. Can be done by only one Kohen who can place it on the side of the Mizbeach. And even if you have to add some words here, and even if I would say that it is benatila, that it is something which is held and carried. Who says that it's something that is carried by Kohanim who have blemishes? Maybe it's only Kohanim who don't have blemishes who would have this mitzvah of holding the arava. So Imam Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, we have so that's the question mark. Okay, fine. So now we have a machlokas between Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Chanamar that the arava, this mitzvah of arava is a yisod neviim. It was something which was established as like a takana. It was a takana that was established by Nevi'im, by the Nevi'im Achronim. Who are the Nevi'im Achronim? They were Chagai, Zechariah, and Malachi. So they would make takanas for the Jewish people together with the Anshe Knesset Gedolah, as Rashi points out. And they made this takana, Yisod Nevi'im, that you should shake the arava. The Chanamar arava minag Nevi'im. And the other opinion says, no, it's not a takana, it's only a minag. What's the difference as to whether it's a takana or whether it's a minhag? This is a whole big discussion. Rashi says that the difference is, and we'll see this from the Gemara on the next page, whether or not you make a bracha. If it was only a minhag nevi'im, so you wouldn't make a bracha. If it was a takana, so then you would make a bracha. Because there's a takana, because then you're obligated to listen to whatever law is established by the nevi'im based on lo sasum small. So then it makes sense to make a bracha. They say Ashir Kisharim Tzavit Sivano, but Sivano through lo saso, but it's only a minhag. A minhag is not covered by lo saso, so you wouldn't make a bracha. So Tistayim, so we have a proof. The Rabbi Yochanan who Dama Yisod Nevi'im. It was Rabbi Yochanan who said that it's a Yisod Nevi'im, it's a takana that was made by the prophets, by the later prophets. I'm Rabbi Yavam, I'm Rabbi Yochanan. And when would these prophets have made the takana? They would have made it at the beginning of the second base of Mikdash period. So I'm Rabbi Yavam, Rabbi Yochanan, a Rabbi Yisod Nevi'im. He said that it's a Arava was something that was established as a Takana by the Nevi'im. That sounds like a pretty good proof. To time, yeah, okay, that proves it. That's Rabbi Yochanan's opinion. It's Yisod Nevi'im. So Amalei Rabbi Zera, the Rabbi Yavo. Me, Rabbi Yochanan. Okay, wait a second. How can Rabbi Yochanan say? How can you say he said such a thing? Rabbi Yochanan held it was more than a Yisod Nevi'im. He held it was a Lachal Moshe Sinai. A Lachal Moshe Sinai is the highest status in Yisod Nevi'im. That's a din deraisa already. We've already, because this is the third time we're quoting this on this Amud, right? These three things, that we already described, the 10 saplings, Arava, and the shaking the Arava, or standing up the Arava, in the base of Mikdash during Sukkot, the water libations during Sukkot, are all halakha Rosh Sinai. It's not just a Yisod Nevi'im. So he paused to think about it for a moment. You know what it is? This is what happened. You're right, it's a local Moshe Sinai, but they forgot about it. And then the Nevi'im had a prophecy that it's something that should be reinstituted. So therefore they reinstituted it. Wait a second, but how could Rabbi Yochanan, how could you say that this is really what happened? This is a little bit of a confusing line. The way Rashi explains it is that why would there have been a need to have reestablished it after there was already a local Moshe Sinai to make a Yisod Nevi'im? That would imply that the Jews in Bavel, kind of like when they were in Golos, they forgot about all of these laws. But we know that Rabbi Yochanan said the Jews in Bavel were even smarter. They were bigger time in the Kekarim than the Jews in Eretz Yisrael. So nothing would have been forgotten. During Golos Bavel. Rabbi Yochanan, the Rabbi Yochanan said that you think that you're so smart. He was talking to the time of the Kekarim in Eretz Yisrael. He said the Torah that we have is the Torah belongs to Bnei Bavel, because when Rav Kahana, who came from Bavel, came to Eretz Yisrael, so he answered all of my questions. I had speakos with respect to all kinds of different halachos, and I couldn't figure out the answer. And Rav Kahana answered all the questions for me. So I see that the Jews that went down to Bavel, they were tremendous giborim, and not necessarily in physical strength, but they were giborim when it came to Torah, so therefore they wouldn't have forgotten anything. So lo kasha, so we have a different answer then. What's the answer? Kami mikdash, kami gvulin. The real answer is that when did Rabbi Yochanan say when the top of Mem Danon base? Now, when did Rabbi Yochanan say that it was Allah Moshe Sinai? So Allah Moshe Sinai to shake the Arava in the base of Mikdash. But when the Arava service that we do outside of the base of Mikdash, that we do nowadays on the 7th day of Sukkot, whatever it is that we do with the Arava, nobody knows exactly what to do. But the thing that we do, everyone knows to smash it into the ground. That much we know, right? That we whack it on the floor. So this practice is a that we do nowadays. That's a machlokes, whether it's a Yisod Nevi'im or Minhag Nevi'im. And Rabbi Yochanan is of the opinion that it's an outright takana, that it's Yisod Nevi'im. And the other opinion, which is how we hold halacha l'maaseh, is that it's a Minhag Nevi'im. It wasn't a takana, it was a minhag. A minhag. What nafkamin is, we don't make a bracha on it. So I'm Rabbi Ami, a Rabbi Tzvi Chashir. So Rabbi Ami says, okay, I'll tell you some other halachas. Once we're on the subject of Arava, so let's talk about what we need for the Aravas that we're going to be holding on Hoshana Rabbah, right? The mitzvah of Arava, whether in the base of Mikdash as a local Moshe Sinai or nowadays as a minhag or Yisod Nevi'im, it requires a shear, meaning that just like the regular Arava has a shear of what tvachim, so the Arava for the mitzvah of Arava also has a shear mistama tvachim. That's how we generally assume.
Why the Arava, not the lulav? Why the Arava?
Why Dafka the Arava? There's a whole discussion about why Dafka the Arava, because the Arava represent the Jews that have no Torah and have no mitzvah, so we're whacking them into the ground because we want to have Torah and mitzvahs. Or other, the Arava represents the mouth, and we want to make sure that our mouths are going to be pure. So we're going to beat up our mouths and say our mouths have to be submissive and they can't just talk whenever they want. Or the mouths of the people who are prosecuting against the Jewish people should be stopped up, and those mouths should be closed. So all kinds of different explanations. But anyway, tell us a little bit Pnei Atzma, and the Arava is taken by itself. It's not taken with anything else. The special mitzvah of Arava is done without holding the lulav at the same time. That's why we're always very careful. You put down the lulav, the other daled minim, and only afterwards you pick up the Arava. Now our minhag is that we have 5 different Arava branches, but that's Torah's minhag already. That we did the number 5. Really, it could just be one. We'll see. Kivan Amar Amar. And tell us b'fnei atzma. And the be'ein adam yosi they chavas b'arava shabulav, and you can't fulfill your mitzvah with the arava that's inside the lulav. So that's obvious. The second part is kind of like a corollary of the first law. Even the amar, once we have the postulate they didn't tell us El Bifnei Atzma that you can only hold the Arava by itself. Shita, then it's obvious. It's an obvious corollary. I don't need to state it as a separate theorem. That a person is not Yotze with the Arava inside the lulav. Obviously, the Arava has to be, standing alone. So so I might think, no, maybe that's only Hechad Lo Agbe. I might have thought that's only if you didn't, when you shook the lulav in the midst of the lulav the first time, you didn't shake it again from the midst of the Arava. But if you shook it again from the midst purpose in the midst of Arava, I might have thought aim alone, then maybe then you can fulfill the mitzvah. Kamash V'la. No, even then you don't fulfill the mitzvah unless the Arava is being held by itself. Most poskim are of the opinion that even though the chatzchila you shouldn't do this, but the Evan, if you took the aravos out from the lulav afterwards and you just shook it by itself, that you could use those very same aravos up to fulfill the mitzvah of arava, as long as you're shaking it by itself. There's not a chatzchila. Chatzchila should be a separate standalone arava, but the Evan you can be
It's the last action in the Arbat meeting, and with the the ground is the last action.
Yes, it's the last thing you're gonna do.
So perhaps you can
So really, it should be a standalone arava, and there's a minute we saw from yesterday that it's brought by the Gabayim, to the base classes. You should really use those aravas. There is this one opinion. The one opinion is mentioned as a yesh omim in the Shulchan Aruch as well. That there is this one opinion, even though we say it's not the halakha that we follow, but we mention it at least as an opinion that you can fulfill your mitzvah of arava with the arava shivlula. The kama shiura. So we said that there is a shear, but what is the shear of the arava? So Amar Nachman Gimel Badei Alin Lachin. That's not talking about a shear per se with respect to how big it has to be, although we generally assume it has to be 3 tefachim. That's what the Ran says. That's how we pass in the halakha, just like a regular arava for the lulav has to be 3 tefachim, so to this one. But he says it has to be, interestingly, he doesn't say 2 branches, which is what we hold with respect to the mitzvah of lulav when we include the arava. But for purposes of this mitzvah, it should be 3 branches, 3 nice gimel badei alin lachin. So he says like this. He says that if I have 3 branches with fresh leaves. Rav Sheshes says no. Even if it's 1 branch and 1 leaf. What do you mean? You're going to hold 1 branch with nothing, no leaf, and then you're going to hold the leaf without a branch. No, what it means is 1 branch that has 1 leaf. Even if I have 1 leaf in 1 branch, that's going to be good enough. So Amma Ivo. Ivo is the father of Rab. Ivo says, I was in front of Rabbi Eliezer Bar Tzadok, and I saw a very interesting interaction. I see how Gava, a certain man, came in front of him. Arava Kameh. He came in front of him with an Arava. Shakel Chavit Chavit V'lo Barak. So he took the Arava. He said, "Thank you very much for the Arava." And then he, according to he did something. Chavit Chavit. He did something twice. And he didn't make a bracha. In other words, he did whatever the service was for the Arava. Chavit sounds like he beat it into the ground, right? Yom Chibut Arayos. It's the day in which we smash the Aravos, we whack the Aravos into the ground. So that's what the Rosh says. The Rosh says that that's the way you do the service, that you whack the Aravos into the ground. Rashi, as I mentioned before, Rashi is consistent. Rashi says you do nanuim, that you do shaking on the Arava. So that's what he says here. Over here, Chavit Lashon Nianua. It says Chavit Lashon Nianua, you should shake the Aravos. And as I mentioned, that is what the Ramah mentions in Shulchan Aruch. You should do both. You should shake the Aravos and then you whack them into the ground. It's a question: when you shake the Aravos, do you shake them the same way that you would shake the lulav in all 6 directions, or you just shake them a little bit? Different practices. With Kesava Minhag Neviim, he held it was only a Minhag Neviim, and therefore you don't make a bracha. Famous Tosfos over here that talks about. So why do we make a bracha when we say Hallel on Rosh Chodesh? It's only a minhag. So he says. So maybe then we shouldn't make a bracha when it on a minhag. So you shouldn't make a bracha for a Hallel and Rosh Chodesh either. And the others say, and he quotes Rabbeinu Tam. Rabbeinu Tam says no, it's only a minhag that's like a tiltul bi'amo, like just shaking in a rubber or something and just beating it into the ground. So that's like such a low level minhag. You don't make a bracha on that. But if it would be a higher level minhag, like actually be citing Hallel, so you make a bracha on that type of a minhag. And then this relates to why do we make brachos on the second day of Yontiv when the Yom Tov Sheni Shagalios is only a minhag, and there's a whole question about it. Satosa says, well, maybe because we don't say B'tzibanu. If you're making the Kiddush on the second day of Yontiv, you don't say the word B'tzibanu, so therefore that's okay. And others say, but we do say B'tzibanu on the Mitzvah Sayom. So the Ran says there's a very easy answer as to why we make brachos on Yom Tov Sheni Shagalios, and that is because who says it's only a minhag? It's a takana. The Gemara says minhag avosenu biyadenu. No, it's a takana that because minhag avosenu biyadenu, therefore we make a takana that we observe the second day of Yom Tov. It's a whole big discussion. Anybody who wants to read more about it can read my article in Kabbalah coming from this past year and whatever. Okay. So anyway, Ivo v'Chizkiya b'nei Brate the Rav, Ivo and Chizkiya, who were the grandsons of Rav through his daughter. Aisu Arava, I guess he got the name of his great grandfather, the Saibo. Aisu Arava the Kamei the Rav. So they brought an Arava in front of Rav, and Rav did the same thing. That Chavid either he did a lot of shaking with it, according to Rashi, or he did a lot of whacking it into the ground, according to the Rosh. Below Baruch, and he did not make a bracha because he also held there was only a minute. So Amma Ivo have a kamina kamei Rabbi Elazar Tzadok. Now Ivo is another story. He says we have one story of where Ivo observing Rabbi Elazar Tzadok is another story. Also the kamei how Gava, a man came in front of him. He said, I have a whole city. I'm like Karaisa Eastleigh. I have a city. Kamaya Eastleigh. In that city I have vineyards. As Isaiah Eastleigh, I have olive trees. And I'm worried that maybe we're not doing the right thing. He was a God-fearing man, and he wanted to correct his misdeeds if he was doing something wrong. It was a Shemitah year. He says that these people from the city, they work and they want to get wages. Mekashkashin bekamaya, and they're hoeing and cleaning up the areas of the vineyard. But Oakland is they're getting paid wages from being allowed to eat the olives from the olive trees. So that's called doing skora, doing business with Perush Shvius, because the olives that are growing in the olive trees are Perush Shvius, and this fellow is paying the workers, so to speak, for the hoeing that they're doing in the vineyards with the olives from the olive trees. So he asked, Arich lo arich, is this okay or is this not okay? He's a God-fearing man. He wants to do the right thing. So Amalei lo arich. So Rabbi Elazar Tzadok said, no, it's not a good thing because you're doing skoro with Perush Shvius. So Kasharik Lebe Ozo. So the fellow said, thank you very much, and he started going away. So Amakadu Havis Diary Be'arahada. So Elazar Tzadok commented to Ivo, I've been living here for a long time, Memshon, in 40 years. I've been living in this area. It's the first time somebody asked me a shayla about Shmita. I never saw somebody who is so straight in the way that he conducts himself as this fellow. Wow. He comes and he asks me shaylas. Otherwise, all I get are Yalav Yavel shaylas. This guy's asking me like a real shayla. So then the guy sure enough came back and he said, wait a second, you told me it's not good. So what should I do? So I'm away, wait a second. So now I know I shouldn't do it this way. I'm of it. So what way should I do it? How do I go about doing this correctly? So I'm away. So Elazar Tzadok said, here's what you got to do. You have to declare all of your olives and the olive trees ownerless, so it would be available to everybody, which is what you're supposed to do on Shemitah, right? The Shemitah year, your crops are supposed to be available to everybody. You're not allowed to put fences around them. The Chashuchaya, and make sure that those people who have dark lives, meaning that they're poor people, will have access to them. The same Pitaya, the Kashkushe, and the people, the Kashkushe Karmim, and the people who are hoeing your vineyards, just give them money from your own, from your own account, from your own bank account. So you're not going to be using Perush Shvius to pay them, and that'll be perfectly fine. Wait a second, but the one thing that he didn't say, that Rabbi Elazar Tzadok didn't say to this man, was that there was anything wrong with hoeing the vineyards during the Shemitah year. Isn't that a problem? You're not supposed to work the fields during the Shemitah year. The Kishkushe Mishari, since when is this okay? V'hatanya, doesn't the Brisa say, V'ashvias tishmetena unetashta, that the Shvias, you're supposed to leave the lands fallow. Tishmetenim and the Kashkesh means you're supposed to declare it a year of rest for the fields, that you're not going to hoe between the trees on the Shemitah year. Natashtam in Lasakel, and you're supposed to abandon the fields, that you're not going to remove the stones that are around the trees and so forth in order to beautify the fields. So how could he have allowed, could Rabbi Elazar Tzadok have allowed this hoeing to take place? So Amar Bukra Bachama, no. You got to understand that there are different types of the hoeing and the clearing of the debris and so forth around the trees. There are two different types of doing this. One type is okay, one type is not okay. It's a general rule with respect to Shemitah year. Whatever is going to improve the tree and enhance the tree, you're not allowed to do. Whatever is going to sustain the tree and prevent it from dying, that you are allowed to do. So one is that if you have open roots, so you have to cover up the roots, and that's something that you got to do in order to save the life of the tree. That's okay. In other words, work that's going to just improve the tree, so it enhance the tree, so that you're not allowed to do. But in order to close up the exposed roots, Of course, you could do that. Shari, that's going to be permissible in order to save the trees. So I'm Ivo, on the subject of Ivo quoting Rabbi Elazar Bar, so we'll keep on going. So I'm Ivo, Mishum Rabbi Elazar Bar, that Al Yaloch Adam, here's another member, not allowed to walk Be'ave Shabbosos on Erev Shabbos, not allowed to travel Yotiv and Gimel Persos. More than 3 Persos, it's about 12 kilometers. But it was also a distance of time. It took about 3 hours and 36 minutes to walk 12 kilometers. And that would like take you, too close to Shabbos in terms of when you would arrive. So I'm Rav Kahana. So Rav Kahana, there are 2 versions of what was said over here. So Rav Kahana said, "Lo amen and levese." That's only if you're going to. They're not necessarily expecting you to return back home. You were out on a business trip or whatever. They didn't have cell phones in those days. So you're going to say, "Oh, I'm on my way home. I'm going to be home at the following hour." So nobody knew to expect the person. Levese. So you're going to come to the last minute. There's not going to be any food for the Baal Bayis who arrives at the last minute. It's going to cause a lack of shalom bayis. It's going to cause acrimony and dissent because of the fact that he's upset that the food wasn't prepared for him. So you got to, arrive in enough time that the food will be prepared. About Lishpuze, but if he's going to be a guest somewhere, he doesn't really expect food to be prepared. So he relies on, that which he has anyway, that his box of matzahs, in his car, he's going to rely upon. So it's not going to cause any bad feelings. Because the Amri, others say that it's in order that there be enough time that he can help prepare for Shabbos, so enough time to prepare the food and so forth. Because the Amri, Rav Kahana, but another version of this is where Rav Kahana said, that no, that the chiddush is that even if it's his own home, where presumably people, are more laid back, he still shouldn't arrive at the last minute. But certainly, if he's going to be a guest somewhere and they're not, going to be expecting him at all, and they're going to, feel bad that they don't have, food for him and so forth, then and he's not gonna find anything over there. Like at least in his own house, so they'll find a little bit tucked away in the cupboard that he'll be able to eat. But if he's, if they weren't expecting him and it's a stranger's place, it's possible that they won't have anything for him. So therefore, the chiddush is even if it's his own house, he shouldn't travel in such a way that he's going to arrive at the last minute. So I'm Rav Kahana. Rav Kahana said, "Yeah, this happened to me. That I arrived home in the last minute. I couldn't even find a small gefilte fish dish. I couldn't find anything. Couldn't find like even a little bit, of a dish, in a dish of fish and a little bit of flour, the smallest possible dish that you would prepare on Shabbos. I couldn't find anything." Now the Mishnah Berurah says that nowadays there's another consideration that you should take into account, which is that you don't want to arrive, you don't want to have such a long trip on Erev Shabbos because maybe you'll get delayed on the way and it will cause Chilul Shabbos because you'll still be traveling on the road when the sun sets, and it might lead to Chilul Shabbos. That's another really good reason not to travel such a long trip on Erev Shabbos. Mitzvah Lulav Ketzad, we'll get to the Mishnah. What is the mitzvah of a lulav? So we said that when it falls out, the first day falls out on Shabbos in the Beis Hamikdash, people would bring the lulavim to the Har HaBayis beforehand, the day beforehand, they would bring to the Temple Mount, and they would place the lulavim on the benches. So Tani Kamed Rav Nachman, what they would do is, they would place it not necessarily on the benches, but there was like a little balcony, there was a little awning on top of the benches, and they would put it on top of the awning. Why in the world would they put the lulavim on top of the awning? It's a hot time of the year. It would dry up the lulavim. So does he need to dry the lulavim? They just need to they have a placeholder for the lulavim until they're going to use it the next day. Why put it on top of the awnings? No, not agag. It shouldn't be gag. It should be gab. They put it on the back of the benches. So it should be on the benches, not on the awning on top of the benches. They put it on the benches. So Rabbi Yehuda. Chava mentioned something named Rabbi Yehuda. You should know that there were lots of benches. Har HaBayis, the entire area encircling the perimeter of the Temple Mount, Stav Kapulaya, was a whole colonnade. Stav Lefnim Stav, they had multiple layers of benches within benches. So there were lots and lots of benches on which people could place the lulavim. Stop here, everybody have a good Shabbos.